there's two types of employees, hunters and farmers. Your hunters are your salespeople. Those are the people who thrive on quote unquote kill. And they're going to get a level of satisfaction off of just making a sale. You have other people who that's not what they're comfortable with. But in a society, in a business, you need both.
On this Business Monday episode of A Call to Leadership, I can't wait for you to join me to ask and answer some really difficult questions around pay. Is pay for performance necessary? Is it essential? Is it something that is related to extrinsic rewards, intrinsic rewards? What exactly do we do to rise people to the level of their possibilities through different kinds of incentivizations? Can't wait for you to join us with Travis Revelle and Sam Salah. I'm Dr. Nate Salah, and this is A Call to Leadership. Travis, Sam, here we are again. Wow. Like, I feel like we just never left the room.
Right.
That's because we did.
That's what happened.
We're doing back-to-back episodes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see, wow, you guys don't ever change your clothes. Right. No, we do.
It's my favorite outfit, right?
Yeah. And so back-to-back episodes, if you haven't listened to the episodes on how we look at people in the workforce, whether they're at home or working in an office, definitely check that two-part series out. It's hot. But we are transitioning now to, okay, we have people who work for us. The work world is changing. Are intrinsic rewards the way to go? Is paper for performance the way to go? How do we compensate people with the carrots and sticks, with purpose, satisfaction, motivation? How do we keep them feeling like they're a part of the bigger picture of this organization and motivating them to do the best possible work they can do from a financial perspective? This is a big question. Mm-hmm. It's a huge question. You brought it up, Sam, in some of our discussions that we need to talk about this. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll take the first part of it if you don't mind. No, I think that's integral in getting maximum performance out of your employees. I mean, if your compensation is flat, you're going to receive flat performance, in my opinion, and what I've seen.
And when you say flat, you just mean
they're going to do just enough.
Hour, $10 an hour.
Going to do just enough. You know, in my organization, you know, I have kind of, I see all these different angles. So my direct sales organization, 100% commission, 100%. But there's guys who are making life-changing income, like a real estate agent or a mortgage broker, you know, the 80-20 rule type deal, you know, like high commission, and they're making high compensation. But you can have a little bit of both, right? In any kind of atmosphere, right? But I'm a firm believer in performance-based compensation, whether that performance-based compensation is a salary and commission, or a salary and profit sharing, but something that incentivizes your employees to do just more than what's expected, right? And if you don't put that out there, why would you expect them to do more? And a lot of times when I'm talking and I'm speaking to other entrepreneurs that are struggling with getting better performance out of their employees, the first thing I ask is, how are they compensated? You know,
do you think compensation is tied to how they feel about your valuation of them? Is that something that you see?
I think they look at it like, I'm paid to do a job. If I do that job, why should I do more? And I always believed in building performance-based compensation. So you have this minimum, right, that you expect, and you're paid this salary or this hourly rate. A base. But to get this performance, you put the incentives there to motivate them to reach that point. In turn, you making more revenue, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that, for some reason, is still foreign to a lot of companies and a lot of entrepreneurs. They just want to pay people X, and, you know, they wonder why they're not getting more out of their employees. And it's directly connected to maybe they do feel their self-worth is less because you're only valuing them this way. Hey, I think you're better. I think you can earn more money. So what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw these incentives out there. And if you hit these goals, you're going to be rewarded. Wow, that's amazing. That motivates me. That makes me want to work harder.
I agree. I think pay is a piece of the puzzle, right? It's not the puzzle, because you could pay me a lot of money and there's certain jobs I just won't do because I'm not going to be satisfied doing them. But, you know, in my organizations, obviously there's a sales component. Those salespeople are paid a base, and then they're paid commission. When you look at the other components of my businesses that they're not sales driven, right? They're more task driven positions. I do profit sharing, and I do that for a couple different reasons. One, as Sam stated, I want to maximize the performance of my employees. But another reason I do that is because I want the employees to view that business as theirs, right? If there's a ownership, quote unquote, ownership stake, right? I think that they treat their jobs differently. And so what I really try to do is I try to tie in whatever that role is in the organization. That role is important, right? It's a piece of the overall process. And so I tie that into, I make sure that they understand how important that role is, what that role means to the other roles within the organization. And then I tie them into profit sharing from the company's perspective. When the company does better, obviously as an owner, I do better, but I want my team to also do better. And I have found that allows me to kind of get everybody rowing in the same direction at the same time, because they're all kind of focused on how do we maximize revenue. One portion of maximizing revenue is keeping costs low. So employees understand, right? Here's how much it costs to buy supplies for the office. So if we go through a lot of supplies, great, if that's what we need to do. But if we're wasting supplies, that's coming off of the overall revenue of the organization, which means it's coming off of your profit sharing percentage. And when you really do it well and you get everybody kind of rowing, you will watch your profits start to increase, because people they want to be rewarded for doing good things.
And it's important you bring that up, because it's not just about increasing revenue. It's also about decreasing cost. Mm-hmm. And if we can get our people to be a part of that process and see the reward for it and be a part of receiving the reward, it only will increase their desire. Not everyone, of course, but in general. And another thing that's important, I think that you both kind of key in on this, is how we structure that incentive based on how we communicate what's important. And I'll give you an example. There's been studies that reveal that just profit sharing for the sake of a token benefit it actually can be counterproductive. It becomes an expectation, and then it just becomes part of my salary.
Part of my pay. And
so even the rewards that are profit, or even that annual bonus, the Christmas bonus, right? Remember Christmas vacation, right?
Vacation.
Right? Classic case of like, I now expect this. And what happens? You know, things go wrong, right?
But that's not, to me, that's not, and I think Travis would agree, is that's not performance-based compensation, because that's strictly paid off a group of people's performance, and you get a percentage of that at the end of the year. Not your own performance.
Correct. Yeah, because in the argument in the movie was, look, you know, I just thought it would be better to save some money and not give everybody a bonus at the end of the year, right? I mean, you're right. It's cumulative across the board, and you know, you're talking, but you're also talking about cumulative profit sharing.
Yeah, which is great. Yep. Yeah.
But I think the key is, when we're talking about that, I think the key is communicating the benefit for each individual and communicating the wins along the way.
I communicate the wins and the wins and the losses.
Yep.
Right? Because I don't share full P&L statements, right? But I share enough, right? Here's our expenses that we had broken down. Right. You know what I mean? So that it almost becomes a holding a group accountable. They start to hold each other accountable, right? Like all of a sudden, like, hey man, busting my butt, but over here, this guy's blowing through, you know, reams of paper. I'm just, you know, he's, you know, in the laboratory business, right? I mean, things are extraordinarily expensive, right? I mean, we've got pieces of equipment that are $1 million, right? And so, you know, if that machine goes down, we're in trouble. And so people can see what's happening. You know what I mean? They can see what's going on. And again, it comes from my personal way that I trust my employees. I want to be open with my employees. I want them to understand how the business runs. I want them to feel like they're a part of something bigger than just the task that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. And when money comes into the organization, I'm a firm believer that that's not my money. That's the organization's money, right? They're a part of that organization. They help make that money. And so I think that, you know, the best case scenario for me is we have a really good quarter and there's a profit share, and then we have a not so great quarter and all of a sudden there's not that profit share, and you explain the whys, it clicks because it doesn't become a part of guaranteed salary, right? It becomes, I really enjoyed that $1,200 bonus check that I got last quarter. Now I have a $300 bonus check.
Now it's a letdown.
Now it's a letdown, but it's a learning experience that if we don't do it as a team, it doesn't happen.
Or we don't care about the team and we just want to make money for ourselves, which you've experienced that before, where, you know, so profit sharing and performance based, you know, that's two different ways to compensate and two different ways to reward, right? For some people, they could care less about how the organization's doing on a whole, but if I go out 8 hours a day and I crush my sales, I should make my money, you know. And it's for some that they would, and some are not even really money motivated people. I've been in situations where in the service-based industry that I've seen where you throw out incentives for people and they really don't like perform any differently. And, you know, that's an interesting thought that you could throw incentives out there and good incentives, but it doesn't make them work harder or better.
Perfect example. This is back in 2010, and we were launching all these offices. You remember, I was having you run the sales side, and Sam was working with these accountants to increase the volume of new clients coming into these, because we launched a bunch of kiosks, right, in these malls, and we were just giving it a demo run, see if we wanted to do it. And you're like, Nate, none of these accountants are incentivized by me telling them I'm going to have, you know, an extra $50 or $100 or whatever. And you're right. I mean, it's also individual based, and this is what we talked about on a previous episode of when we talked about incentivizing people to come into the office, right? You have to know your people.
You have to know your people.
Yeah, and it's a different culture. So a service-based culture is different than a sales-based culture, right? So service-based culture, you have a trade that you're good at. Come in. If you have a good skill set, you're probably getting paid well. This little bit of extra money to get you to the next level, to get more out of you, may not be as motivating, right? To some who isn't a sales environment, who's all about reaching the next level of compensation, right? So again, you know, you could do straight commission, you could do base, or you could do commission and base, right? I feel like the way that needs to be structured is you have a minimum performance, like I said earlier, that you need to get out of that person. To incentivize them to go beyond that, that's where your performance-based compensation needs to come in, right? And then when someone hits that, it's a big deal. Hey, so-and-so just hit their numbers. They made X, you know, use them as an example in a company meeting, hopefully in person. You know, use them as or on a Zoom, you know, that they performed well, right? And they made this extra money. You know, but it's very hard to, especially in a sales atmosphere, 100% in a sales business, to motivate someone without some kind of financial incentive.
No, I mean, because I truly believe there's two types of employees, hunters and farmers, right?
I like that.
Your hunters are your salespeople, right? Like those are the people who thrive on the quote unquote kill, right? And they're going to get a level of satisfaction off of just making a sale, right? And that sale tied to compensation is important. You have other people who that's not what what they're comfortable with. But in a society, in a business, you need both, right? You need both. You can't just have all hunters.
Right.
Be back to hunters and gatherers, you know what I mean? Like, and you can't just have farmers, right? Like, you got to have both individuals. And so for me, in my organizations, the salespeople, they are heavily compensated on their ability to close deals and drive revenue, and they're paid on a revenue model, right? They get a percentage of revenue. So it's not a dollar amount per sale, because one sale could be $1 million a month, another sale could be $5,000 a month. Those two sales are paid differently. And when it comes to the individuals that are more task oriented, right? The salespeople can go kill it and have all the sales you want, but if you don't have the people who are doing the tasks that are back at home office, well, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose that customer. That customer is going to walk, right? Like, it's not going to happen. So tying those two jobs together is one of the most challenging parts of leadership, right? But it's also defining, this is the organization. These are all the pieces we need. All the widgets need to be turning the right way, doing the right thing for the watch to work, right? One little screw off out of 1,000 screws that are probably in my watch. One's off, watch doesn't work, right? So everybody, there's not one role that's more important than another role. It's everybody understanding what their role in the organization is specifically, but also how does that role translate into the operation of the entire organization. And I think you do a couple things with that there, right? You give people the ability to feel that they're a part of something bigger than themselves, which is usually something everybody wants to feel like they're a part of something. And you also, even the most mundane role in your organization, you show the importance and how important that role is to everybody else's role. And you pay them a good base, right? I pay for A players because that's who I hire. So I'm always kind of at the higher end of a salary range because I expect good A players, great benefits, you know what I mean? All the things that come with it. Mm-hmm. And this profit share is when the organization does really well and there's more profit that comes in, everybody gets a piece of that pie, right? Everybody gets a piece of that pie because we're all rowing together and we did great. And I think what's incredible is when you can, you see the look on their face when they do it. And then I also think it's incredible when you take an L sometimes, right? I think it's important in life. You have to take a loss sometimes and really let that feeling sink in, right? And it's I never want to feel that again. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to not feel that loss.
Let me show you an example of where this was a performance-based compensation was a catalyst for performance, right? Because that's what we all want, right? So I had a stint outside of my entrepreneurial journey where I was a manager at Blockbuster Video. I ran a location, right? And it wasn't a sales atmosphere. It's renting videos, and this is taking everybody back pre-Netflix, right? They had the Movie Pass. Do you remember that?
Half the people listening to this probably have never been to a Blockbuster.
Listen, we're going to take you back, okay?
Right.
We're going to go back in time where we actually picked our movies up from a store. Okay, so they had this.
It's after 2 hours of looking around.
Yeah.
It's like an event.
Right,
You're like, let's go to the movie store and let's go walk around for 2 hours and find one movie to watch for an hour and a half.
Right.
If you ever want to know an example of a company that didn't adapt and went out of business,
Blockbuster.
Oh, we got to have an
was
episode on all of those. Yeah.
that was one. So anyway, I had a sales background, long history in sales, and they called me to interview me or whatever. They're like, hey, we got this Movie Pass product. We're moving to we want to increase sales and increase subscriptions and all this other stuff. And I'm like, they don't have salespeople there. Like, they don't understand sales culture. So I got hired on. I took over this location. So they're like, we want you to sell, 5 Movie Passes a day, I think it was, or something like that. And I'm sitting here looking at these employees and I'm talking to them and I'm like, so, we got to do this. And the mentality was, they don't pay me to do that. Like, why would I do that? Like, whether I do my job one way or another, whether I make this is like, so I'm like, okay, so how do I fix this culture that is not a sales culture, that is a clerking culture, like a grocery store, right? And obviously I was incentivized to do my job, right? And there was a breakdown in compensation because I was compensated to do those things and I was tied into things and they weren't, right? So I created incentives outside of the company's incentives to get my people to perform, right? And to sell these movie passes, right? We were selling like 15 a day. Okay. Like everyone in the company was emailing me like, what's going on? What are you doing? How are you doing this? You know? And it was such a simple fix. It was incentivizing them, right? And then tying them into the success that we had. And I led by example. So I was a sales guy. So I was like, this is how you sell it. This is how you pitch it. This is how you close it. This is how you place it. While you're clerking, this is how you place this product and you'll be successful. And it happened.
And you know what, Sam? I mean, you part of that, and I love that story because part of that is teaching people that everybody's in sales. Mm-hmm. Like everybody in the organization is in sales. I'll give you an example. You talk about clerking. Literally yesterday, I was at my grocer checking out, and the young man who was checking me out was chomping on some potato chips. And he stopped while I was getting ready to check out. And as he was getting my receipt, he put another one in his mouth. And as he's telling me, have a nice day, he's got his mouth full of chips. And I'm like, dude, you just like killed that sale. That sale.
It's disgusting.
First of all, it's nasty.
Right.
Who hasn't told you that you should not be eating at your, while you're checking people out? It's not professional. And he's clerking, but he's creating a bad image for that organization, and it's reducing the quality of the experience of the sale that's happening right then and there.
But he doesn't look at it as a sale.
He doesn't look at it as a sale. He's like, hey, I rung him out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He did his job.
He did his job. Yeah, he did his job. So, you know.
But what I'm saying is that as you tie in the incentivizations to that experience, right? And create an organization around that, that changes the dynamic of behavior.
Yep.
And that's really what we're talking about here is how do we change the dynamic of behavior so that everyone does row in the same direction, that we have our hunters and our, you know, I love it. I love how you describe the farmer's mindset. And, you know, you've got different people who perform different roles within an organization based on their own skill sets, right? Some are rainmakers, some are going to work the back office, things like that. I think once you start to tie everybody into that, then you start to see a collective around how can we optimize the experience everyone's having. For example, and it doesn't have to be, it can be on the macro level or the micro level, right? The individual performance incentive base, or on the macro level, profit sharing, or other things. For example, we picked up a couple hundred new clients last year because there was a retiree that wanted to send his business our way. Well, through that, we had some additional revenue that came in, and I shared with the team that we were going to make some upgrades. We're going to upgrade some aspects of our ERP system and whatnot. And why? Because we want to have an organization that serves your needs better, serves the client's needs better, so that we could all function more effectively. And so that was a macro level incentivization based on the extra revenue that was coming in. And people appreciate that. So it's, I mean, there's all different kinds of ways we can make this happen. But I think the part of it is you communicate. It's so critical to communicate, like you said, the why. You know, why we're doing this, why it's important. So then what happens? People start thinking, oh, well, if I can be a part of that driving more revenue in, new clients or however we do it, then there's going to be some intrinsic and extrinsic reward I'm going to get.
100%. And it's funny that almost every conversation we have amongst each other, right, when we're talking about these different topics, it all comes back to communicating, right? I mean, if you're communicating to your team the whys, why is it important to the organization? Why is it important to you? Why am I doing this? It's amazing just how much people can jump on board. But, you know, I was in an organization where we didn't get, well, you know, the salespeople got paid off, you know, commission off their sales, but the customer service people got paid off of customers taking, you know, these little snapshots and giving their feedback and doing a little survey, right? And they had a high survey, they got rewarded, and the customer service of the entire company increased because you were rewarding those behaviors, right? When you reward the behaviors that you want, you get better behaviors.
And the rewards can differ.
It can differ.
Because some people, like I said, it's a gift card, $100 gift card for doing a job.
An extra day off.
An extra day off. Like I said, everybody's completely different.
Correct.
But, you know, like you have, as a leader, you have to find what motivates people. That's your job.
It's your job.
Yeah, and it's not going to be cookie cutter. I can't sit here and give you a solution and say, hey, if you do this compensation, you're going to get more out of every one of your employees. No. But if you hire the right people that you want to be motivated by this type of compensation, you will get a better response, right? So some of us have the wrong people working for us.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
And what's funny is I literally have a case study at home, right? I've got twins, and they couldn't be more different when it comes to what motivates them to do something, right? One wants a pat on the back, the other one wants something tangible, you know? And so any aspect of our lives, we need to understand the people that we're leading, how to motivate, and how do we get the behaviors that we want out of them, right? Whether it's your wife, whether it's your kids, whether it's your employee, whether it's your boss, right? Like, how do you understand what's driving that individual, and how do you reward the good behaviors and eliminate the bad behaviors, to modify their behaviors to go in the same direction? And a lot of people, it's paid, but there are a lot of people who, you know, I mean, there's a study, right, that once you make $70,000 a year, anything over, it doesn't matter. Now, that's hard for me to fathom, right? Too. Because I'm money motivated.
I seen that, and I don't know.
Right. But, you know, it makes sense, right? Like at a certain point, income threshold, you can live a comfortable life. And so maybe it's not money, maybe it's time, right? You want more time, right? Or you want a trip. You know, companies throw on, you know, President's Club, President's Circle. I mean, everybody names it different, but it's basically the same thing. It's a 3-day trip to, you know, Mexico or something like that. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways you can
some
do
people
it.
want more
pizza party
education.
when you're kids, right? Like,
you
know, you read 100 books and you get a little personal pizza. I mean, that personal pizza costs $3. You know what I mean? And you're going to read 100 books. Like, if you really did the math on that from the time you put into it when you're a kid, you'd be like, nah, this is not worth it for this, right? But it was the reward. It was the accomplishment of doing that.
Well, you had mentioned in another episode about the janitor who got a ring when the team won.
The team won, yeah, and he was ecstatic, right? So to refresh for people who didn't hear that, a janitor at the high school won state championship, and they gave the janitor a state championship ring because he played a part. He had a role. Right? If the lockers weren't clean, right? What happens, right? Like, you come and you're getting ready to, you know, go play a game, and you don't have clean uniforms, like whatever it is, right? Like, everybody in the organization, no matter what role they play that role, or you wouldn't have hired that position. That position doesn't matter. Why is that person there, right? Not the person, but the position. Why is the position there if it doesn't matter to your organization? It matters, right? And so finding what motivates individuals and reward them. You're going to get better behavior. We're human beings.
Yeah,
right.
I think the cheat code in keeping people is having a great company culture and compensating people appropriately for the job they do. If those two things are done properly, you will have a better time, a better organization that will have better performance, get more out of their people.
Better retention.
And tying the reward, as you've said, to the desired outcome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? That's so critical. And it reminds me of Musk. And if you haven't listened to the episodes on innovation that we had, go back, because in that we talked a little bit about Musk and his employees and how he incentivizes them to be innovative.
Yeah.
And if they're not, that's a problem, right? So because innovation for his organization is the essential. It's speed to innovation, and it's not just for his in company. He sees that as an overarching perspective of all humanity. That's why he made all of his designs open source. So he's like, look, this is I mean, it's totally like counterintuitive what you would do in an organization, hide trade secrets. It's like, no, it's open source, because the idea is proliferation of innovation, and so he ties all of his incentives to that in his organization. So you've got to know in your organization what is most important, what are the outcomes that you hope to achieve, and then you tie all of those myriads of incentivizations that we're talking about. Some of them can be intrinsic, some of them can be extrinsic. It's marrying them together. Some of them are at the macro level, some of them are at the micro level. But and someone listening might say, well, that's so daunting. There's so much to do here. Yeah, that's running a business.
It's running a business.
I mean, you got to get on board with it.